Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. We have a special guest with us today. This is Corey Congilio. Great to see you.
Yeah, good to be back.
We're so far apart that we'll wave instead of shaking hands, right?
Hello over there.
Yeah. So we've been having fun talking about pedals.
Oh yeah, I mean we're nerds, you know. How
exactly.
It is, you know, it's everything that's got strings or you can plug into, you know, a guitar. We want to talk about.
Right.
We always get along with that. It's cool.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I learned from you.
Well,
we were talking
likewise.
about that. Yeah.
We're both doing a lot of videos, so that's all cool. So you're here on behalf of Martin. You've been a clinician with them for 5-6 years now, right?
Getting up there.
Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah.
And man, that 0028 sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's killer. This is part of what they call their reimagined standard series, where it's we like to say it's kind of like a Back to the Future sort of thing, where we're taking a lot of what consumers have talked about with regard to playability, functionality, but still preserving the Martin tone and the Martin, you know, sort of experience that you have when you own one for a while. You know, bringing all that together, whether it be the look of it with the aging toner or the modern playability and the performing artist taper on the neck. I mean, it's got sort of all of that stuff in one instrument in the entire line.
Right.
So the entire line has been reimagined for that, basically.
Right. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool.
sound nice. Really live sounding resonant guitar.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, sounds great when you're playing it. Of course.
Well, thanks. That's very kind.
So obviously you're a guitar player,
right?
But also a producer, engineer. You do instructional videos. You're an educator. You do lessons. You're playing with artists. You have a band. You have had an EP out long ago.
Oh man, I forgot about all that stuff.
Yeah, you're kind of covering a lot of ground there, which is sort of interesting to me because it seems to be kind of the baseline for someone who wants to make a living in the music industry.
Right. You know, I kind of did it backwards, unbeknownst to me. I didn't know I was doing that. I've only come to these realizations recently. Like, I didn't know you could actually be an artist. You know, to me it was always like, well, as long as I'm a guitar player and maybe a wedding band, then that's a working musician. But as I started working retail, I started getting more opportunities to work with manufacturers that introduced me to the online lesson world, particularly with TrueFire.com.
Sure.
I've done 12 courses with them since 2011. It's fantastic, outlet for me. Made a bunch of friends and some fans along the way worldwide, which is really cool.
Right.
But I've been living in Nashville for about 5 years now, and it's just an amazing place of just an abundant creativity and friendship, and becoming the session player that I always dreamed of being. My heroes are session players. I just love to contribute, writing songs, working with artists, helping them produce their music, and getting to do a lot of touring. Last year was a landmark year. I'm working with an artist that you're going to hear about soon. Her name's Lucy Silvis, and we got to tour with some lesser known people like Chris Stapleton and Miranda Lambert, some of those, lesser known country stars. Yeah. Played a little place called Red Rocks a couple times.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome.
So it was a great year. I'm incredibly thankful for all those opportunities. And getting to be here with Martin Guitar is such a homecoming. I grew up 20 minutes east of the Martin factory.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it took all that time to kind of move and try some other things and then connect with them again.
Come full circle.
Yeah, it's really great.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of being able to be a success in all those fields that you talk about is preparing yourself and getting your playing and your knowledge and your experience to the point where you can step into those gigs so you can say yes to them.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you evolved as a player.
Wow, I'm really happy to answer that because it's something that doesn't get asked enough, honestly. I think in this world of social media, as people just see the highlights and they think you just woke up one day and got that gig, where it's like a lot of these opportunities have been relationship-based for years and years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And to do that, you not only have to sharpen your skills as a player and as a musician, but you have to be sensitive to those you're working with and try to be a good listener and try to. Sometimes you got to be in a situation where you're playing for what I call the name on the front of the shirt and not the name on the back.
Right.
And I think my success with some of the companies I've worked with, they've seen that I try to work with companies I believe in their message and their product. So I'm not minimizing my own name.
Sure.
I want to work with quality folks that we equally respect each other.
Mm-hmm.
You do that for long enough and you start laying these layers of foundations, and then people start to take notice. And then in the performing world, which is really my ultimate first passion, it's not as abundant these days. You're not playing 250 dates a year all the time, but you have to align yourself with great talent so that you can be fulfilled creatively. And to do that, sometimes you have to be malleable and play different styles and that sort of thing. If you want to be an individual solo artist, then I suggest you be really, really great at that. And I didn't know that I could be that. So I just started learning all these different styles because I wanted to play as much as possible.
Right.
So ultimately that helped me play with artists and be a sideman. I mean, my heroes are like Mike Campbell and Buddy Miller, for instance, and they're some of the best sidemen of all time.
Right.
And they can play in any band, I'm sure, and be really, really great at it. So it's all those things helping you to sustain a music career. And the funny thing is I'm doing more of the playing these days than I ever have, whereas before that it was sowing the seeds with people like Martin and some of the other companies that I've maintained a relationship with, and then ultimately True Fire, and learning how to spin a lot of plates. Like I think if you're a restaurant owner, I know restaurant owners are working 17 hours a day. Sometimes they maybe can't let go of control, but I know for me, like I'm up in the morning doing emails, I'm fielding calls and texts, I'm trying to find time to practice, and I'm probably learning material for shows. And then I'm also trying to work on my own material for these demos, and then I'm creating demos for presentations and that sort of thing. And sometimes people say, well, how come you're not doing as much video? I don't see as much Instagram as I need to see from you. It's like, it's hard, to set up a camera and do that and compose something and really nail it, because I have all these other obligations too, but it keeps it fun.
Right.
And keep the plates spinning, as I like to say.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So thanks for asking that.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really important as musicians try to build careers and work forward. So you mentioned Instagram and social media. Tell us a little bit about how important that's been to your career. How does that factor into success?
It's been important for sure. Early on, connecting with True Fire was great because they post lesson clips on YouTube. And I was getting emails from people all over the world saying, I really enjoy your teaching and that sort of thing. And those people have followed me on Instagram here and there. And it's great. The thing that I think is the most complimentary is that when I get the really heartfelt messages from people that really believe who you are. If you can be as sincere as possible on social media, people will notice. And I think that's the reason I had success at True Fire, is because this doesn't lie. They can see who you are in your playing and in your presentation. And the way I approached teaching and playing was like I had nothing to hide. I was like, look, a pentatonic scale is a pentatonic scale. Let me show you how I do it. Oh, here's the trick. There's no trick. And a lot of times there'll be sort of a barrier between the talent and the fan. I don't like to have that if I don't have to.
Yeah, right.
So that's what Instagram and Facebook and stuff helps us do, is it helps have that connection.
Sure. You mentioned True Fire, and you mentioned you've done 12 courses for them. 75% of those courses have been in the blues. To kind of estimate. Is that your primary field? Is that your passion as far as or genre rather?
It's funny because I am a born and bred blues R&B player, but I did get the country bug in the mid to late 90s and really jumped all over that stuff. And then I realized that I was chasing an endless thing. Like I could never be the country player I wanted to be. I had to be the best player I could be at all the things that I've accumulated. So yeah, it's a lot of blues stuff in there, but I have branched out into some country, and then I have some acoustic courses. But I ultimately want to help people, like what you're saying, be a better, well-rounded musician, because the things that you can't teach are, I get questions like, hey, I showed up to the gig and the other guitar player's doing this. What can I do?
Right.
It's like, well, do you own a capo? Well, have you thought about playing this other inversion? Those are really fun things, because that's where music comes together, and then that band project becomes cohesive and really is where the magic is.
Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it was funny, I had a student that I was Skyping with the other day said, I like playing to a jam track, but it's better to learn a song. And I said, you're absolutely right, because you're not going to play a jam track at a gig.
Right.
You're going to play a song.
Right.
And you might only get 4 bars to solo, or 8 if you're lucky.
Right. The rest of the time you're playing rhythm.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So I like that real world stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been interesting for me to watch coming out of the generation I did, where there was no YouTube, of course, and so everything was learned on the gig and on the bandstand. And you did play every weekend, or played hundreds of nights a year, as you're talking about.
Sure.
Do players still have that opportunity today? And if so, or if not, how do you think that impacts how people are learning and progressing as musicians?
That's a great question. I had a really cool thing happened where a student came from England to study with me for a week. They ended up taking 2 weeks off, and his company helped sponsor it. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it worked out where I had gigs, I had sessions, I had all this stuff that he could experience, and get the sort of, I took him to some famous guitar shops, and he got to see all these expensive vintage instruments. We had a great time.
Right.
But he caught himself a couple times saying, "So what did you watch to learn?" Oh wait, like I was like, I didn't have YouTube to learn. Like I was learning on, whatever means possible. I mean, VHS was probably like the most modern thing that I could, and then there was DVD, but before that it was playing by ear, and my dad had some books and my uncles had books and stuff like that.
Right.
And he was blown away also, like we're blessed in Nashville to have such great musicians, on every street corner. He came to a rehearsal for my little blues trio, and he said, at the end of the rehearsal, "You've never played those songs together before?" I was like, "No." He was like, "It would take my band an hour to get through 2 songs. You guys played like 30.
Right.
So and that comes from a generation of learning how to play with each other and learning to listen. And I love to see the youth movement in guitar. It's great. There's so many really, really killer players. But my hope is that they're playing with people.
Right.
Because you can be a great bedroom player, and if you want a lot of likes or followers, that's cool. But to me, that's why I don't do it that much, because I want to be in a situation where I can play with people. And that's why recording sessions are so great, because you get a chart in front of you, the drummer counts it off, and you go.
Right.
And then you listen, you're like, I can't believe we did that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And that's where the magic is to me. Still playing with people is if I could do that 300 days a year, I would do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We have,
as long as the catering is good.
Exactly. Right. That's the main thing. Right. So we have 2 rules in the band that I play with.
Cool.
One is no drama, and the other is no rehearsals. We've never rehearsed in the whole experience
Amazing.
of the band, and people just call songs and we play the songs, and there's an experience factor that goes into doing that, as well as an ear training factor that comes, I think, from picking that stuff up by ear rather than by eye.
Now, do you do some of your work at home before you get to the gig?
Typically somebody will make a chart or not. Or we'll
great.
just find a chart somewhere. Or
There's a
something
really cool thing that happens in Nashville called Loud Jams that a guy named Tom Hurst put together, and there's so many musicians that I don't get to do it all the time, but occasionally I get called, and it's a night of music. He sends a Spotify playlist out, and there's a spreadsheet, and you choose the song that you want, and it shows you who's playing bass drums, and then you can choose to rehearse with those people or like communicate. And usually it's just a text saying, "Hey, listen to this live version. Let's do this ending," and do it. And I've done everything from playing a Harry Connick Jr. to a Michelle Ndego cello song to all these weird different theme nights.
Right.
And that's really cool because it makes you come together for that. It's similar to what you're talking about,
right.
but it's only one song. You got to do a whole gig of it.
Yeah, well, but over the years, of course, you get your stuff built up.
Right.
And
No, that's really cool though.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It lets you be spontaneous and it lets a lot of interaction, right?
And you'd be surprised, like there's crowds that appreciate that now. I did a gig the other night where we did the same thing. It was, we had rehearsed, but we were coming together and just to watch the people's reactions, they really still get excited when they see good musicianship. So I don't think the live aspect will ever die. At least I hope not.
Yeah, right.
So don't stream too many of your shows. Make people come to them.
There you go. So to me, the key to it is that you have to listen.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have someone who wants to develop their listening skills as a musician?
Wow. That was a hard one because you're really so tuned into making sure you don't make a mistake kind of a thing. But if you can listen to everybody else and hear what they're doing and try to find your place, that's really helpful, and rhythm to me is what really dictates that. So you listen into what the bass and drums are doing, and if the bass and drums are playing boom, doom, ch, doom, 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 ch, there's a lot of space for you to go, so that's one aspect of listening.
Right.
The other aspect of listening is dynamics and volume levels. I was on a tour recently, and the artist I play with, Lucy, her music is very dynamic, and that's not something that happens on arena stages too much because it's a big show and it's loud all the time.
Right.
And the other bands were like, "You guys are really dynamic." That was really cool. And I didn't even thought we were dynamic. We just have learned because of her vision for her music and how she dictates it to us is in such a lovely, thoughtful way. She's really dialed into what she wants to hear in not a taskmaster sort of way at all. She's lovely.
Right.
And I didn't realize how it was coming off the stage.
Right.
Really, really cool. So that kind of stuff, and just having conversations with people in your band about, don't put yourself first all the time. You know what I mean? It's like a team.
Right.
Everybody has to do their part.
Right.
For sure.
Typically the most popular players as far as getting gigs are the ones who support the other musicians.
Yeah.
The best.
Thankfully, my calendar stays full with that kind of stuff. And when I get the good look from the band leader, it's always, I know I did my job right, kind of a thing.
Right, gratifying, right.
For sure.
So I'm a fan of your True Fire courses. I watched
Thanks.
a number of them, and what I take away from a lot of your playing and listening to your solos and things and videos that I have seen is you seem to take a real targeted approach as far as chord tones in the progressions you're working on, whether it's a more complex blues kind of a thing or a country track or whatever it is. Can you talk a little bit about how you develop that kind of an approach?
Yeah, and I get asked that question a lot lately, and I forget that it's something that I've even worked on. For me, I said it the other day to a student. I said it's major pentatonic or minor pentatonic, major pentatonic, arpeggios, and inversions of some sort. So if I'm playing in a blues, like an A, so that's our groove, I could play, minor pentatonic. And there's of course a little major in there too. But I can also play the arpeggio, and I can play chord inversions. And then just if I want to play more single line stuff. So I tried to do a little bit of everything there, play through the chord tones. And I'm not a jazzer, but I took a lot of lessons from really great jazz guys when I lived in Pittsburgh. My friends Steve Delich, Mark Lucas, Tony Jamflone, these are people you probably don't know, but they're incredible players. That taught me that kind of stuff, And what's cool is you don't have to play so deliberately through some of that stuff, but you can hint at it. Today, like, my biggest influences are people like, Robin Ford's one of my heroes that's thankfully still with us. I would say a lot of my heroes aren't with us anymore.
Right.
And I've really, I've gotten to become friendly with Tommy Emmanuel, and I don't profess to do anything like he does. But when he plays by himself, he has the great ability not only to sound like a band, that's this whole thing, but he can play single line stuff and weave through the changes and not have it sound weird. Because he can do all that, but then he'll play single line stuff and hit all those chord tones and really drag the listener's ear through it. And honestly, one of my favorite people to do that was Willie Nelson. When I heard Willie play a solo, like if he's playing Georgia, sorry, you have some G to B, yeah, there you go. He would play the arpeggio for each chord that went by, and that wasn't a simple scale idea. I was like, okay, so how's he doing that? And then I learned that you're actually playing through the chord or technically changing keys in a lot of ways. So it's, I hate to make it too complicated because I didn't learn it in a complicated way. I had to get from A to B as quickly as I could because I always felt as a player I was behind the 8 ball because I had older, better friends all the time. I always hung out with the older guys that could play. And by older, it could be 3 years older, 30 years older. It didn't matter. So I was always trying to catch up, So it was always, how can I get there? Okay, it makes sense to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
The other hallmark, if you will, that I hear in your playing is you leave a lot of space. You're not one of those
Some days I
continuous
don't think
streams
I
of
do.
16th notes. But,
Well, thank you, though.
But there's that phrasing aspect that works into there too. Is that something you can develop, or is that a natural talent?
It's something you can develop, I'm convinced. And I learned that from people like Robin, Scott Henderson, and then listening to, people that just, like Vince Gill or somebody, or there's another artist who's a great guitar player in LA, Adam Levy, who played with Nora Jones, and he's done some True Fire stuff, and he can get so much money out of one note. You know, it's amazing. I'm glad. You're kind of blowing me away that you said that, because I constantly try to harness how much I want to play.
Right.
Because I did have that period where I listened to a lot of saxophone players and jazz guitar players that were incredibly great at hitting those notes and not breathing, but also making it sound cool. So there's a fine line there for sure. But like, you know, another influence was John Scofield, where John could play a groove like. Maybe play like a few notes,
right.
And by rhythmically adapting it or adapting different rhythms to it, I didn't play this. I didn't have to yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if I'm doing, and I do that for a few bars, I can then go. And have it really make something then, you know. Another thing I like to do is, and I teach people this all the time, as I call it, the one-string solo. And I learned this from that one particular guy, Tony Jamflone, years ago. He would call it, I could play the 24-hour blues. So he said I could never repeat myself if I was playing this way. So it's like, and if you do that, you know, like you're playing like a blues. Now somebody will like, well, I wouldn't play that, but you might put two strings together. Two strings.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people get hung up on
Playing in a position.
right, and then but Albert King could do this all day long. And why is that good enough for him but not good enough for us? You know, so that's the way I kind of look at it. But that's, you know, folks, he really did watch. he's not pulling these things out of thin air. I really appreciate that. It's very flattering.
Sure. Watching you play and listening to you play, it reminds me of, actually, Paul Gilbert was just here, and we were talking with him.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, because obviously he does a lot of teaching too, developing your internal clock and that sense of rhythm with or without a metronome. Is that something you worked on a lot?
And continue to. I feel like I cannot play back in the pocket far enough. If I listen to one of my other heroes is Keith Richards, and you can't be as loose as that guy. I don't care who you are, it's impossible. But you can strive for it. You know?
Sure, right.
And then a lot of the great drummers and bass players I played with have really told me, like, look, let's listen, change your listening. You know, nowadays there's hip hop records that are like almost out of time. They're so far back in the pocket, and I hear drummers able to pull that off. You know, I'm like, it can be done. It's really, really cool.
Right.
So one of the things I just started talking with a student about, and I could do it here on my phone, which has probably never happened. You probably want to keep the phones quiet in an interview. But so here is 50 beats per minute, right? The idea is to make that beats 2 and beats 4.
Sure.
1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to really help your swing. And you could even make it 40 or 45, you know, and try to play 1, 2, 3, you know, so 1, 2, 3, 4. you could rush that very easily, but if you get used to playing that, and I've had teachers show me that and try to play through jazz standards that way and play your melodies against that. So then you're listening and you're reading, and it's
tough.
Yeah.
Right.
Really tough. I was going to say something, but I can't curse. So.
No, that is, the slower you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And
what also helps too is I've been telling students this too, is the slower you go with an acoustic guitar is nice, but if you're playing an electric guitar unplugged, don't keep it unplugged and try to milk that tone. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things I see with beginner to intermediate students is they're not getting the best tone out of the instrument that they could. Mm-hmm. They may only be able to play, well, that will sound great if you get a good tone.
Right.
You know, and vibrato is right and all that stuff. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on.
Slower the better.
Right on. Well, man, congratulations on all your success and everything
Thanks,
you have going
yeah.
on. You got a lot of plates in the air, as you mentioned. Lots going on.
Sometimes it's too much, but I managed to get my head above water.
Yeah, and you mentioned you've been coming here for like 11 years now, or something like that.
It's been a long time. Yeah, before all this, if anybody's been here, way before it was a quarter of the size. Might even been on a different street. I think it was a different road at some point.
At that point, yeah, we were probably still back at the Bass Road.
But I mean, one of the things that's great about this is how serious your sales team is about being educated. Mm-hmm. And there's a bravado even about it that you're darn right we know what we're talking about, kind of a thing, and we're going to help the customer. And it's amazing how every sales engineer they still call them sales engineers here? Yeah. They come in and they always have like questions from customers. I was like, how many people are out there buying guitars? Well, it's a lot, and thankfully it's a lot.
Right.
So we can all keep doing what we're doing. But it's really cool to see the care that goes into this operation.
Right. Well, thank you.
It's a big deal.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, and we appreciate you being here. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for the lesson.
Oh yeah,
no problem. Sitting here. That's all great stuff. Inspiring stuff to look at how to be more musical. I think that's a really cool thing. So
yeah, for sure. Definitely get your hands on one of these new Martins too, man. It's been fun just playing these all day.
There you go, yes. And thank you to Martin for bringing you in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great to see you.
Likewise.
Hope you come back soon.
Okay.
All right on.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll have more guitars, more amps, more effects. We'll be making lots of music. I'm Mitch Gallagher.